Sometimes I feel like I don't have a partner. Sometimes I feel like my only friend is the city I live in, the city of angels. Lonely as I am, together we cry. Drive on the streets 'cause she's my companion. I walk through the hills 'cause she knows who I am. If she's my good deeds and she kisses the windy, I never worry, now that is a lie. I don't ever wanna feel like I did that day. Take me to the place I love. Take me all the way. I don't ever wanna feel like I did that day. Take me to the place I love. Take me all the way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Welcome to the show. Quan, my man, hello.
Hello. Great seeing.
Oh, man. Guys, welcome to the Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mirshahzadeh. And boy, do we have a special guest for you. We have we've become friends. This is actually the first time we've talked, but this is my friend, Quan Huynh. Very special guest. Welcome to the show, Quan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, guys. So the format of the show is quite simple. We are bringing together change makers who are living their passions to create change in the world and to create greatness in the world, And Quan is neither short of greatness nor passion. And I'm so excited to have him here with me today. We met, about 18 months ago. We went through a guided author program. And ironically enough, we are both publishing our book on the same day, September 15th, 2020, 4 weeks from yesterday. So I'm so excited for you and your book, Quan. And I want to do a little bit of housekeeping, and I want to jump into a little bit of your bio. Is that cool?
Sure.
Perfect. So, guys, a couple things about live streaming. First of all, we're live. Ask questions, start watch parties. We are going to be talking about some really wonderfully interesting things today as we get into Quan's new book that's coming out on September 15th. We're having book babies on the same day. But I want to tell you a little bit about my guests. I will say this, I really think Quan is one of my more special, interesting guests. And as you guys know that watch the show, I really go out of my way to bring interesting people onto the show. Mostly it's because it's people I want to talk to. I want to learn from them. And I just want to say a few things. So Quan's an entrepreneur, CEO, and author of his new book, Sparrow in the Razor Wire. So Sparrow in the Razor Wire, launch date is September 15th. He's a warrior, magician, and mountain of goodness. So Quan, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, man, I'm so pumped to have you. So you and I think we grew up in the same neck of the woods. Like, you're from Orange County originally, and is that correct? Or San Diego?
Orange County, when I came out here to California, I actually grew up in Provo, Utah. Came out here when I was 10 years old to California.
So, and what part of Orange County did you live in when you were 10?
Huntington Beach, Westminster area.
Okay, yeah, right. So I grew up in Anaheim and Fullerton, Anaheim Hills, and so I just want to give a little background here. So how we met was both Quan and I. We did this program through our publisher, who's Lioncrest Publishing, and they have a program put on by a company, their media company called Scribe, which is they have two programs. One is called Guided Author, which is if you want to write a book, nonfiction book, you can partner with them. There's coaching. You work with their editors, and it's kind of like a coaching program for when you want to write a book. And so there's a private Facebook group where there's hundreds of people on there, and he and I became fast friends on the private Facebook group, just kind of supporting each other. And there's a lot of supporting going on. When someone finishes, every day when you do your, we're supposed to write at least 250 words a day. So when people are writing, you're kind of going behind them and patting them on the back, and you announce how many words a day you wrote. And then you can go from there. So he and I were always kind of supporting each other and writing our books. And I learned a lot about you. So that I found was just really, you have a really interesting story. And so if you wouldn't mind, I don't even feel like it's right for me to say your story at all, besides the fact that you've written a book. But would you mind telling our audience, what did you write your book about? Because I think your story is an unbelievable story, and what has gotten you to where you're at today.
Sure. Well, my book is written for men that are doing long or lifetime sentences. In it, I'm sharing with them how did I come to my own sense of freedom years before I was paroled from my own life sentence. I had a life sentence. I've done 22 years of my life in correctional institutions, and went to prison in 1999 for the murder of another human being.
So you, in 1999, you went to prison and you were convicted with a life sentence.
Yeah, I was given a second-degree murder. I was found guilty of second-degree murder. At the time, basically, in the state of California, it was the same as a death sentence because they were not paroling any lifers. From 1977 until 2007, there was a landmark ruling that came down that began opening the doors for men or women with lifetime sentences.
So being convicted of a life sentence for second-degree murder, had you had other convictions, or was that your first conviction? What caused such a
no,
brutal...
that was like my fourth time being arrested. I'd gone in and out since the age of 17, was heavily involved with gangs, and 1999 when I was arrested for the murder, I'm ashamed to say that there was no sense of remorse. I did not care what I had done, and I just looked at it as, yeah, this was a gang crime. It was my life or theirs. That's just how I justified it to myself and to those around me for years, even during my prison sentence.
So I think we're around the same age. I'm 42. Are we right around the same age?
I just turned 46.
Oh man, you look so young.
I was lucky. They say prison preserves you in some way, so I took care of myself, and so thank you.
Yeah. So in 1999, I was 21, so you would have made you 25. And the murder you were convicted from, what year did that happen in?
The murder happened in happened in 1999. I was arrested and tried for the death penalty after that, and I went to trial. I was convicted in 2000.
So in 2000, you were convicted of murder. You were in your mid-20s. You had been involved in gangs, which is what kind of got you to that point. How old were you when you got involved in gangs?
About 17 is when I was first arrested. Already went to juvenile hall, and then got more steeped into the gang culture inside juvenile hall, the county jails, and the California Youth Authority.
So these were these like ethnic gangs, or were these like mixed gangs? Like how
I was involved with a very violent Vietnamese gang.
Right. And so like me growing up, I grew up in Anaheim Hills, which had not as much. It's a nice area, right? So it's an upper middle class area, but there's always like, we knew, and Anaheim is where my grandparents lived, where there was definitely, and they didn't live in a great part of there. So there was a lot more like, we were aware of gang violence happening in Orange County at the time. Most of it was between the Vietnamese gangs. There was some Korean gangs. And there was a lot of Hispanic gangs, right? That's kind of my recollection of this, at least, and this is 25 years ago. So you grew up in you were young. You moved from Provo, Utah. You said, is that correct?
Yes.
And my assumption is that there was not a gang culture there whatsoever.
Not a gang culture that I was involved in. I would have to say no. I mean, I grew up there. We came to the United States when I was just several months old. My brother and sister were born over there, and we were the only Vietnamese family that I knew for quite a while out there. So I grew up never really feeling like I fit in. I just remember as a little boy wishing that I looked normal like the kids around me, or wishing that me and my family looked normal. I never once understood, understood or had an appreciation for my culture until years later,
and so
or many years later.
So what's funny was, where I grew up, there was a prevalence of Korean gangs. A lot of these kids were not. It was more out of, like, to your point, having a sense of belonging, and a lot of these kids were kids that were bullied, and then they got involved with a lot of these different, like we just said Asian gangs, right? But there was, and I had a lot of friends who were South Korean, so there was a contingency of South Korean gangs, kids that were Korean, and that they joined gangs, and I actually remember they were like, this is the first time I had friends that got shot at, and this is growing up in upper middle class by these gang members, right? And these are kids, these are 16, 17-year-old kids, and I remember, because I knew a lot of these kids when they were younger, when they were in elementary school and junior high school, and they had been bullied, and then by the time they got to high school, they said, fuck this, and a lot of them joined gangs, and people stopped screwing with them because they're like, well, dude, these guys are going to come, these guys are part of Asian gang, and the Asian gang guys, like, bring guns, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and this is in Orange County, which is upper middle class part of Orange County, where that's not normal, right? Now, in areas like Westminster and Vietnam, and Garden Grove, and even parts of Huntington Beach, you had, like, skinheads there, right? Mm-hmm. So there was, and so I started noticing that, and this is, again, youth culture in Orange County, that you have these gangs come up and kids started doing stupid stuff. And so it sounds like you were looking for a place to belong, and that's where you found belonging. Is that kind of?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I grew up in Utah, I already felt like there was something wrong. I don't fit in. When we came out here to California, I went to school for the first time with a lot of other Vietnamese kids. However, many of them began to tease me because I couldn't speak Vietnamese well. A lot of them had just come over to the United States, so they couldn't speak English well. So there was also that part of me feeling like I don't fit in around me. There's something wrong with me. And I know that is what gravitated me towards the gangs later. Like, yeah, this is a place I finally fit in. This is where I belong. And this is my life. And I really believe it.
Yeah. So when you got involved in the gangs, one thing led to another. Violence started happening, as far as, these gang fights, kids, having beef with each other, and it was funny. It was when I don't remember when it was. It was like sometime maybe a year ago. There was something. Maybe it was. I actually looked up I Googled your name and kind of looked it up because I wanted to learn more. I was intrigued by what you were doing because I saw that you were writing a book, and you had mentioned something around parole or something around that. And it was something you had posted on the Scribe private page. And so I looked it up. And so it sounded like something crazy happened. It was, you were out with friends, something happened on a freeway, and there was a shooting and someone got killed. Is that kind of a correct assessment?
Yeah, that's a very general assessment. I mean, the cold hard truth is my friends got into a fight with a different group of guys. I came out of the club. I wasn't even involved in the fight. But yet I wanted to be the one to pull the trigger, and I'm the one that orchestrated following them for over 20 miles from Hollywood. We ended up shooting them near the city of Commerce. And I shot and killed one human being and injured another person in the car. And that was, for me at the time, okay, well, these guys got caught slipping. We're in a gang, and this is what happens.
So you got convicted of the crime, second degree murder. You got a life sentence, and earlier in the conversation, you had said that you didn't feel remorse.
Mhm.
Then you found yourself in a correctional facility, and probably assuming you're going to be there the rest of your life. Is that
Yeah,
what you're thinking?
that is what I believed for a while. That I'm just going, since I'm going to die in here, I'm just going to live the way I want to live. And uh, unfortunately, it became worse in there. Just get more involved with the prison culture, the criminal enterprises, everything.
So, we have a question that just came across. Your book is about finding your inner freedom. What sparked the search for finding this freedom while incarcerated?
About the 10th year into my prison sentence, the 10th or 12th year, I began to ask myself questions like, am I meant to die in here? Is this what my life is meant to be? Uh, my niece had been born around that time. And the first time I saw pictures of her, it was just a spitting image of like what my brother looked like as a little kid. Um, my grandfather had passed away, and I think I just came to a point where I also, like, my father had passed away when I was 13. I think he was 38 at the time. At this time, I was 35, and I was contrasting my own life with what my father had left behind when he passed away, like his legacy and how he affected so many families. He had created the Vietnamese Refugee Association in Utah and helped a lot of the refugees adjust to their new homeland. So as a little boy, I used to go with him to neighboring states to help out other families adjusting, but I didn't understand what he was doing at the time, why he wasn't getting paid for this work. I didn't understand about making an impact or giving to community. During that time in prison, when I began to ask these questions, I've also always been a bookworm. So I was reading all types of books, and during that time, I became very fascinated with books on the saints and how each of these men or women were able to leave such amazing legacies, especially when I saw very many of them were also flawed at one time or another. They weren't born saints. And that's what I gravitated. I started seeing different stories of different saints and the mistakes and the failures they had. So it was my head filled with these readings. Um, it was, and to make it short, like one day on the prison yard, I sat there. I was standing right there, and I just asked myself, like, why does prison have to be punishment? Why can't I use this opportunity to make myself a better person and to leave some type of legacy, even if I'm supposed to die in here? And I realized I could. And just that small, subtle shift in thinking made all the difference in the world. I mean, I've given a talk where I said, the sun was coming up over the hills that morning. I could feel its warmth on the little blades of grass. I could see the individual drops of dew. And right above me in the razor wire, I heard a sparrow chirping. And I tell people it had probably been chirping my whole prison term, but I had never heard it. But that day I heard it, and from that day forth, prison was not this cold, harsh, ugly place. It became a place where I could connect with other human beings also on their journey. It became a place where I could remake and refine myself. And it became a place where, you know, people think out here and in there, prison is such a ugly, harsh place. But after that time, prison became for me a place of tranquil beauty, a place where I learned self-acceptance, self-forgiveness, and just self-love, and how I could make an impact in the world. In my little small part of the world, on a prison yard, I saw the impact that me and other men around me that were also looking to make the world a better place. We saw what we were able to do.
So I'm sure this is more of a cultural question, because I think that in the United States there's two mindsets. There's the mindset of recovery and of reconciliation, and there's the mindset that second chances. And I think on the other side of that coin is this mentality towards punishment. And, you know, it would be easy for someone to dehumanize you and say, Kwan's a murderer and he should rot in hell for the rest of his life in prison and then go to hell when he's done with that, because words are, you know, weapons when they want to be, and I think like the fact that you wrote a book and the way you've written your book, and I haven't read your book yet, I can't wait to, but just the way you speak, I can hear it in your voice that you understand that. What do you say to people that have this perception that, because I see people do it all the time, that guy, you know, it's easy to dehumanize the person and say that person should rot in hell, but just throw everybody away that makes a mistake in their life. And then the other side, and like killing someone's a big deal, right? Like that's like the ultimate like thing that you can do that is take another life, right? In some ways. And so the other side of that is like I said, this idea that, well, isn't the purpose of prison to try to give you an opportunity to correct yourself and to find yourself? And it sounds like that happened for you. What is your position on just those ideas in general?
Well, I mean, when I went to the parole board, every district attorney will just say that I deserve to die. And I'm sure there's people that say that. I look at it as, okay, yeah, I could sit here and never forgive myself. And I could sit here and say, you know what, I'm a murderer. I can never be forgiven. But then how does that solve anything? How does that help me make an impact in the world? How does that move things forward? I mean, I know I can make an impact, but I know regardless of what I do, I can never bring back another human being's life. Like that's something that I have to hold on to. And that is something that drives me in what I do and why I wrote the book, because I found such inner freedom and peace while I was in there. And I think for myself, like this is just my belief and I'm not pushing on nobody, but for myself is I think that's what we're here on earth to do, is to be able to find ourselves and to help others find themselves. And that became my mission, and that still is my mission. I mean, I looked at and like I said, if you look back at each of the legacies of the saints, some of them had killed people. So, I mean, and I'm not saying like I'm a saint in any way. I'm just saying that is what gave me motivation in seeking a better path and coming at things from a better way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's well, and I mean, I appreciate that, because I think that's like if you take away the crime and just talk about the journey, and that's the journey that everyone should be on, is to be a better person and think of ways to make their lives better. Yeah. And
I mean, I don't think every single human being is going to make mistakes. Some way more than others. And yes, I definitely made the most horrible mistake of all. You know, not even a mistake. It's like the absolute most evil choice of all. And I have to own that. And right. I do own it. So, yeah, but I think moving forward, how do I contribute to the world now? How do I contribute to the goodness of the world? I'm trying to do my small part.
Yeah. So we have a couple of questions, and I want to ask them of you. The next question we just had is, the title of your book is beautiful. How did you come up with it? I think you gave a little bit of a hint, but yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have the title until I wrote about maybe 40%, 50% of our, you know, at Scribe they say the vomit draft. And I got to when I described like my sparrow and the razor wire moment, and I said, this is the title of my book. And it just all came together. So yeah. Thank you, I guess, for the person that said it's beautiful. I mean, I love the title, and I love what the team at Scribe has done with the cover and everything. So
yeah, no, I love the title of your book too, and the cover is amazing. Like that, I was really impressed. They do great work there. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's for sure. Next question is, how do you suggest people start to find their inner peace?
It would be different for each person, but I would say come to a sense of personal responsibility, not from a place of blame or like if there's conflicts in your personal life, look at how they contributed to it. I mean, I realized when I was in prison, we are all experiencing the same thing, but does it affect one man way worse than another man, whether we're locked down, whether there's a fight on the yard, like it doesn't involve him or me or someone else, but why does it throw him out? Or if there's an angry officer in the building and he gets on the microphone and says something foul to just the building in general, why does it throw a man off his whole day? And why does it, other men are not affected? And I think it's just coming to understand a sense of mindfulness of the words or the script that a person has told themselves in their head and examining those, that narrative. That's how I came. Like, I had blamed everybody and did not take any sense of responsibility or justified everything that had happened up to my life. But when I came to a sense of self-acceptance, when I came to a place where I learned what personal responsibility is and owning, every thought, every word, every choice that I make, that's where my freedom came.
I love that, man. So you made me just think of this. So my book is the core value equation, and essentially it's about how do you build a core value driven organization. But without giving away too much of the book, what I came to find in my journey was that I believe that your core values can become the language of your life. Mm-hmm. And so when you think of, where you were and when you got to the point of accepting responsibility for yourself and accepting responsibility for the language and words in your life, what would you say, how did your values change? Because I used to believe values don't change. Now I firmly believe that for lots of people, as they are on their journey of self-discovery and get really authentic with themselves, that they peel away the onion and find out these jewels are their values. So what values came out of this that you live by now?
That's funny because you're talking about peeling away the onions and there's a jewel. I mean, I wrote I think it was like 2012, 2013, as I used to journal a lot in there, and I wrote a mantra for myself. It's called Your Inner Jewel, and it became basically my values of how I wanted to live my life, like setting my intention every morning and reading this little mantra to myself. And it's basically like, listen twice as much as you speak, speak with kind, gentle, firm words, find today's lesson in today's difficulty, effectiveness with people, efficiency with everything else. And it was just a whole bunch of little mantras that I read to myself. And it's always a reminder to keep me on my path. So those became my values. So I also agree, like values can change. I mean, my values in the gang life were not the same values of me later on trying to make an impact on a yard, or the values that I carry now. So that would be what I would have to say on that.
So you had this moment where, you had been in prison for, it sounds like over a decade, where you took this turning point happened, where you began to, have self-reflection and where it sounds like there was a different version of you, that you wanted to live the most impactful life despite the situation that you had, arguably put yourself into. And so what sort of things did you start doing? And you and I talked a little bit before the show about Defy, but what are the things that you started doing that really led you on the road to going from a life sentence to being paroled?
Well, the first thing I would say I did was I began to grieve my father's death. It had been 25 years, and I didn't begin grieving it until after that 25 years. And that became the first wall, I would have to say, that I had built for myself, and everything else was built around it. But once I removed that, then I started understanding, where did this warped sense of identity come from? Where did this poor self-concept come from? Like the words I told myself, or the identities that I held on to for myself, whether it's gang member, being a hustler, all these things that I valued, realizing they were all fake. And coming to a point in my life where like you're talking about peeling away the onion, peeling away each additional layer of the onion, or each intricate web of my, that narrative that I've been telling myself all these years, and realizing every single piece that I've described myself is fake. And I have no true sense of identity. And there came to a point where I was pretty fearful, like, any sense of identity, no matter how fake, is better than no sense of identity. Fortunately, I was immersed in a lot of readings at the time, and some of those also influenced me. I would have to say, like people say, like, okay, what mentors did you have? Like, there are mentors in the books I was reading. Here's an amazing way to glimpse the intimate thoughts of amazing human beings that had lived on this earth, way before we had been alive. And so I don't know, that's the only way I can describe it, where I just became at a place where I just went back to re-examining who I was as a child and rebuilding on that identity. And that became me and how I wanted to do the same for others around me. So you're asking, what did I do? I mean, after I began to grieve my father's death, I saw other men on the yard around me that were also grieving some form of grief or loss, whether it's losing a loved one, whether it's losing family members because they've been in prison so long, losing their dreams, like even just a sense of loss is when they're transferred prison. They've lost their friends, they've lost their being comfortable around people they know, and they have to rebuild their lives. So it's continued loss after loss, and they had no way of processing or grieving it. So I put together a syllabus, submitted it to a prison psychologist who loved it, and we created the first grief and loss group on the yard. And I saw, oh man, I could make an impact now. Then I got involved with the creation of a victims awareness group, where I got other men to come to terms, what is self-forgiveness? How have you caused harm to your victims? What do amends look like? We put together a curriculum on that. So I saw things I could do on the prison to influence or change that culture from one of violence and anger and despair to one of peace and reflection and freedom.
That's awesome, man. And so you started this movement around education and working with men around their grief, and obviously sounds like you had a lot of impact and a lot of healing that was done through that. And then from there, when did you get involved with Defy? Would you mind, actually, we talked about Defy a little bit yesterday on the show, but as I mentioned, Steve Sims was on. How did you get involved with Defy? What is Defy? If you don't mind telling the audience what Defy is, and how did you get involved with that, and how did that help transform as well?
Sure. Defy Ventures is a nonprofit that their mission is to help men and women with criminal histories transform their lives through the journey of entrepreneurship. I got involved with Defy when I was still doing my life sentence at Solano State Prison. So it came there as a pilot program, and it was, to me, perfect for where I was at in my life. It felt like this is exactly the program that I want to get involved with. I mean, I always felt like, okay, in the gang life and going to prison, I'm a hustler. And then, Defy's slogan, transform your hustle. So it just resonated with me, everything about it, entrepreneurship, building a business. I didn't know that besides building a business, it also continued to work a lot on personal growth and personal development, which I was also very interested in. So I got involved with Defy while still inside. I continued with the program even after I paroled. I was able to create my first company 6 months after. And then when they expanded out here to Southern California, about 18 months after I paroled, I was asked to join the team. And so that was 3 years ago that I've been a part of Defy Ventures. Now I get to be in a position to help other men and women that are coming home transition, begin their reentry journey, and begin the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I heard. So I mentioned earlier that the founder of Defy, I met her, Kat Hoke, and she's now started Hustle 2.0. But it was interesting to learn. And for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, it's a program that was started, I think, in Brownsville, Texas, by this woman by the name of Kat Hoke, and then that was another program that then became Defy. And essentially, it's a program that goes in, they bring in CEOs, entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, people that have skill set around building businesses, and you work with in a maximum security environment around teaching incarcerated men and women how to build businesses, essentially using, to your point, this inner hustle. And they use the example, she used the example, if you look at street life, a lot of the folks that are successful in street life are essentially running businesses that are just not legal. There's a lot of elements of team building. And I mean, like, we can argue about what's happening to create all that stuff, but team building, HR, accounting, they're doing all that stuff. The product just happens to not necessarily be on the up and up. But the skill set's there and the hustle's there. And then if you can take that and move that into the direction of something that's legitimate, that you actually create an opportunity for those folks so that when they go from inside to out back into, non, prison world, that they actually can thrive. Right. And I heard a statistic, and maybe you can correct me on this, that the recidivism rate for a normal incarcerated person when they get out is like above 70%. Maybe it's like 80 or 90%. Do you know that number?
Well, the studies aren't clear. I mean, there's some that, depending on how they look at it, 2 out of 3 will go back to prison within 3 years. So that's like what, 67%.
Right. So let's use that number that's called rounded up to 70%. So 70% of people, 7 out of 10 people that are serving sentences come out. There's supposedly been a rehabilitation that happens, and then they go back in. And the reason is because the system on the outside is not set up for folks that have been on the inside. If you come out, in Texas, where I live now, I'm from California, you're a felon. They stamp the word felon across your driver's license. It's a scarlet's letter that they make you carry with you for the rest of your life. If you're applying for a job, you have to say, I am a felon. And then the other side of that is a lot of these folks have, substance abuse issues when they go in, and then when they come out, they're maybe in a halfway house, maybe not. So there's really they're really not set up to do well when they get out. And the thing that I like about Defy and these other organizations is they use the vehicle of entrepreneurism to give people a leg up when they get out. And these guys and girls, when they get out of prison, I heard the recidivism rate is like under 10% for people.
Yeah, it's Defy's rates. We should have some new numbers coming up pretty soon that we're very proud of. But our last recidivism check numbers hovers at about 7.2%.
That's amazing, right? So let's just argue that there's a 90% reduction in recidivism of people that have gone through that program. What does that say about this, like the system? That's amazing. When I heard that number, my mind was blown. I couldn't believe it. I actually tried, like I said, I tried to go to prison to do it, be a part of it, but my flight got canceled. And so maybe when we're done with all this COVID stuff, you can take me, man.
Mm-hmm. I'll bring you in with this. Yeah, you get to meet some amazing human beings in there. So yeah.
Yeah, I've heard amazing stories of this, and we could talk about. I don't want to take up too much more time on this because I do want to talk more about your book. We have another question though. Juan, you say you are a bookworm. What's your favorite book?
I have several. The Alchemist, The Prophet, Mere Christianity. I don't know. There's so many. Just depends on the mood. I've been known to have 4 or 5 books at any given time on my bunk inside prison, and I'm reading all 4 or 5 of them simultaneously. And but those were just some off the top that I could always read over and over.
Yeah, that's cool. I love The Alchemist. That's one of my favorite books too. I have a question for you. We're coming up here towards the end of the show, but in my experience, and I do have some experience with having seen people who get locked up, is that I don't believe that we as a society, I think that there's a lot of problems with how our prison system's set up. And I believe that it's not set up to rehabilitate people and then bring them back out. I believe it's set up to basically make money and shove people in and see what happens. What are your thoughts on the current, like if you were to give advice to people when they think of people who are incarcerated, or what kind of advice would you give to the general population that probably has no idea what it's about, and like if there was a teaching moment for you to teach our audience about ways that they might be able to help, or ways that they could think differently about this problem we have in the United States, what would be your advice?
Let me see. Well, I know, like here in the state of California, to incarcerate one human being for 1 year, I think it's something close to $80,000 for 1 year. And if we're looking at the recidivism numbers, the failure rate of, let's say, you own a company, someone, you're paying them $80,000 a year, and then they just fail you don't have a good product. So, it'd be something crazy, but if you want, maybe invest in 1 year in that person, just half that money in proper training right before they come home or whatever it is. That could be a way. I mean, I just look at it as like, I believe every human being is worth salvaging. And that's just one of my beliefs. And that's why I just do what I do. For people that may not agree, or just that are listening, maybe just think of it like, and they say this all the time. Look, what if you're only known for like the worst thing that you've ever done, and that's it? Usually like people that have met me are very curious, or they'll ask me a bunch of questions. But then usually if I just ask them like, what's the worst thing that you've ever done? They'll back up, or they won't want to say it, or they'll start gawking, and and then just ask them like, what if they were known for that wherever they went?
Yeah. It was funny. My previous guest was sat next to me when Kat came and spoke to us, and that was how she started her talk. So what if you were only known for the worst thing you've ever done in your life? And she's a great speaker, and she put on an amazing like workshop essentially. And it's interesting when you think about it from that standpoint. I appreciate you saying that, because I think most people, they take for granted that they get redemption on their side, that they're allowed to make a mistake and sweep it under the rug. But I think that's a great way to kind of leave the show, is what if you were known for that? So
yeah, I just think it's easy. It's a way of, what? I remember, and I could speak from this because that's how I was. Even there, I went to prison for murder, but I sat there and judged those around me. Well, I'm not as bad as that one because he killed his wife, or I'm not as bad as this one because this one went in for rape, or whatever it is, whichever way I'm justifying. And those are my extreme examples, but I'm sure just the human tendency to not want to cast ourselves in a bad light. And it's easy to judge people because you've known of their mistakes, but it's much harder to look in the mirror and look at your own mistakes and own them.
Yeah. And it takes some empathy once you do that, for those around you, that like no one's perfect. It's not to say that if you commit a crime, you shouldn't, there shouldn't be some sort of way to like.
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying.
Solve for that. Right. No, I'm not hearing that. I appreciate what you're saying. I think that if I always say to this, and I'm a conscious leader, what is the result we're trying to achieve? And so when we look at the incarceration system, or the prison system, are we trying to rehabilitate people, or are we trying to just lock people up? Because they're two different solves, right? And to your point, what if you're known for the worst thing you've ever done? And I think that kudos to you for taking responsibility for it, and then going and trying to make change happen in the world. And that's what this show's all about. Some people might say like, why do you have a murderer on your show that's a greatness machine? And my answer to that is, despite that, you still found greatness within yourself, because that's just something that happened over a 30-minute period, one time out of 46 years of your life. And I'm sure you have to live with it every day, but what are you doing to make the world a better place despite that? And I look at what you've done, and I'm so excited for your book, man. And I'm really grateful to have you on here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you for helping me to get the books in there. Because I forgot to tell you earlier on the show is that what I'm doing is, on my launch week, every book that's purchased, either on Amazon or in bulk, I'm matching it, and I'm going to be donating to someone that's incarcerated.
That's great. So what? Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, like this is the time where we plug what you're doing. So where can people find the book? Where can they connect with you? Just give us the whole gambit on how people can connect with you, buy the book, do whatever. What are the things that you want to let people know about?
Yeah, well, it won't be available until September 15th. The day is yours, but they could find me on all social media, Quan X Huynh, at Quan X Huynh, so QUAN X and then HUYNH. They can find me Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and that's my website too, www.quanxhuynh.com.
Okay, and the name of the book again is Sparrow on a Bird Wire. Is that correct?
Sparrow in the Razor Wire.
Excuse me. Pardon me. I didn't. My notes fell away. So yeah, guys, September 15th, big day. We got the core value equation, and we got Sparrow. Excuse me. We have Sparrow in the razor wire available. You guys, please go support Quan. He's doing some amazing work in a really important area. And like I said, brother, so grateful to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Darius.
All right, guys. We have another show coming up soon here. Another Ben Woodward in about 10 minutes.